Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. New Karen neighbor demands to use my Wi-Fi. After that, my daughter demands I pay for her wedding. And after that, am I the jerk for pulling over for a funeral procession? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to use her neighbor's Wi-Fi. But I have to. Netflix used up all our bandwidth. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. New Karen neighbor demands to use my Wi-Fi. I, 24 female, share a house with two others of similar ages. We all work as freelance creatives and don't earn loads. Our next door neighbor, Anna, name's changed obviously, moved in a few months ago. She has two kids who are 8 and 10, and she's a single mom. I was raised by a single mom, and so obviously wanted to make sure she was okay. I said if she needed a hand settling in, just let me know. A week later, she knocked on my door asking to use the Wi-Fi for her kids, saying that she was having trouble getting the electrician in. Totally fine. A couple weeks pass, and we get a knock on the door, and a kid, her kid, is standing there with a mobile asking for the password. I give it to him as I'm not really going to say no to a kid. A month or so passes, and we're having a few issues with the Wi-Fi. Nothing major, just buffering and stop and starts on Zoom calls. But I work from home sometimes, so need fast Wi-Fi. I texted Anna asking if she had gotten an electrician in. I know she hasn't, as I can see she's connected, but as a gentle nudge. There are now 7 additional devices on our Wi-Fi at this point. She says she's still having issues getting an electrician in. Fine, whatever. It's around the holidays, I get it. Fast forward to now. It's been nearly 3 months and no sign of an electrician. All her devices are currently using our Wi-Fi and we're still having issues with speed. We could upgrade it to be faster, but it's about $20 more a month. My roommate says just to cut her off and not say anything, but I feel bad doing that to a single mom. She also has not attempted any kind of contact or friendship with us besides asking for the Wi-Fi, or asked to extend using it or offer to chip in for it. We have been friendly, giving her a gift for Christmas and offered to babysit should she need it. 5+ years experience doing this. Would I be the jerk for just cutting it off and claiming that we are having issues with it? Not the jerk. Just be honest with her that it's impacting your work and only you and your roommates can be on it. Also, you don't need an electrician to get Wi-Fi, unless you don't have power at all. Saying she needs an electrician for Wi-Fi doesn't even make sense. Not the jerk. She's using you. Someone who has 7 devices has the money for her Wi-Fi. It's clearly not a problem for the engineer not coming, but her not even asking for a Wi-Fi installation. Change your password. Your work is more important than those kids' internet connection. Not the jerk. I think you should just be honest though. Just explain that you need fast internet to work from home and that it's affecting your roommates as well. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her neighbor? Please let us know. When will people learn you never give your Wi-Fi password to anyone? Sometimes I think the people who write these stories are just too nice. It gets to me. Wait. My daughter demands I pay for her wedding. I have 3 daughters who are 29, 27, and 22. The older 2 are happily married with families of their own. I paid for both of their weddings, around $20,000. My youngest daughter is with a guy that I just can't stand. I'm really not a fan of him. He's 30, hasn't lived on his own until he moved in with my daughter 6 months ago, only 3 months since they started dating. He's had 2 jobs during that time and is currently unemployed. He was fired from both, and he has a ton of stories about how it was everyone else's fault in both cases. It's also everyone else's fault that he couldn't move out of his mom's, and I have a feeling my daughter is paying more of their bills than he is. He moved in with my daughter because he said his mom was mistreating him at home, and it was hurting his mental health. But I'm starting to think that the mistreatment was more so people having some bare minimum expectations for the guy. He seems to have a serious issue taking accountability. He has poor hygiene, is lazy, and to be honest, not all that intelligent. They both live like slobs and are constantly struggling to pay their bills. Well, my daughter came to me the other night to let me know they had started looking at wedding venues and wanted to know what their budget would be. Mind you, they've been together 9 months and aren't even engaged. I told her $0 and that they had no business getting married. She got huffy with me and then told me, "Well, I guess we'll just have to elope." I told her that was fine. I can't stop her from doing it, But she needs to understand that if she wants to make these kinds of adult decisions, then she will be treated like an adult, and her husband will be responsible for taking care of themselves and whatever kids they have. She's mentioned having kids young many times as well, and that dad wasn't going to just bail them out whenever. Now she won't talk to me, aside from saying that I don't get to dictate who she marries, and that her sisters both had their weddings paid for, so I obviously don't love her the same. I do love her, but she has always been desperate to grow up and get married, and I'm pretty sure she's more in love with the idea of marriage than she is with this guy. She can be very immature. She is the baby in a large extended family, and I think that has a bit to do with it, which is why I don't want to enable this fairy tale that she's cooking up. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Oh, look, another controlling dad who thinks he gets to decide who his daughter should be marrying. I can tell you firsthand that parents like you are what drives their kids away. Don't be surprised when your daughter goes no contact with you. She's a grown woman. That means she gets to decide who she loves. I can only imagine how controlling you were when she was growing up. You have absolutely no right to an opinion on whether or not she should marry this man. Having a job isn't what makes someone a good person, and it's too bad that's all you care about. This is why I'm so glad I didn't grow up with a dad. My mom was a single mom, and she raised me to respect others. If I had a dad like you, I can only imagine how controlling and judgmental he would have been about my partners. If you actually love your daughter, you better drop the attitude and put your money where your mouth is. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. That last commenter was a perfect example of why I've lost all hope for future generations. Am I the jerk for pulling over for a funeral procession? My wife and I went back to my hometown to visit my family this week. Where I grew up is across the country and much more rural than where we live currently and where my wife grew up. We decided to go see a play in a nearby city that my wife has been wanting to see, and we were running a little late because she didn't get ready on time and we were in a rush. A few minutes into the drive, I saw a funeral procession coming down the road towards us, so I pulled over and put my hazards on. My wife then asks me what I'm doing. I tell her that a funeral procession is passing by, so I have to pull over. She asks why and says that it isn't against the law to keep driving. I say that I know it isn't against the law, but it's a sign of respect that I've always been taught to do. She then starts to get irritated and says that if we sit and wait for them to pass, then we're going to miss the show and they won't let us in. I said that maybe it's a cultural difference, but I'm truly sorry if we do miss the play, but this is something I feel strongly about, and I'm not going to move until they've passed. My wife then gets even angrier and says that she doesn't understand why I have to act this way. I then tried to explain myself as best as I could. I told her that some of those people in that line are currently having the worst day of their life. They're on their way to say goodbye forever to someone that they love. Having been there before, it can be infuriating watching the world continue to go on as normal as your life is being totally shattered. Why isn't the rest of the world mourning a beautiful life being taken? In that short ride between the funeral and the grave, our local culture acknowledges this unfairness. I pointed at the cars behind us and said that each of those people have places they need to be as well. By stopping, we're saying to the grieving, we may not have known the deceased, but we will acknowledge both them and your grief by putting our lives on hold for 5 to 10 minutes while you pass. I've been in that line before, and this simple act by others meant a lot to me. My wife just argued that I was putting the feelings of complete strangers over her, and I knew how much she wanted to see this play, and I was taking that away from her for people I don't even know. I stood my ground and didn't move. By the time it had passed, there was no chance we would make the play, so we went home. My wife is still angry at me and wants me to apologize, which I did for her having missed something that she was looking forward to, but said I would still do it again. Edit. I honestly never expected to wake up to this many comments. While I am fully ready to accept my judgment, I would like to just say that I did not do this to teach my wife a lesson, as a lot of people seem to think. This is something that I've always done, as well as everyone that I know from my town. Edit 2. I've read through pretty much all of the comments, and this really seems to be a matter of cultural differences. Everyone is free to their own opinions, of course, but it is a little hurtful to read all the comments saying that I just did this out of spite. It may be unbelievable to some, but this practice is followed by practically everyone where I'm from. I've on occasion been late to different things in my life due to it, and all I've ever had to say is, sorry, I stopped for a funeral procession, and everyone immediately understood. If you want to call me a jerk anyway, I won't argue. I just don't want judgment passed based on motives prescribed to me that simply are not true. You're the jerk as much as I can relate. I live in the South where it's the custom. If no one else was pulled over, it sounds like you were trying to start your own cultural tradition, and it didn't do much for your marriage. I suspect a bit of passive-aggressive behavior here. Your wife caused a delay in starting out, so is this your way of teaching her a lesson? Or were you so uncomfortable at the thought of arriving late that this seemed like a convenient way to go home and avoid that? If this is typical, you two had better get couples counseling ASAP. You're the jerk. You didn't know these people, but you do know your wife. Would they have been upset if you didn't pull over? Maybe. Did your actions upset your wife? Yes. You missed the play to prove a point. Pulling over may have been a fine custom once in small towns, but it doesn't work so well now. I live next to a town where funeral processions are, for most of the people around us, a major headache. Yes, some people have to yield to the procession, but everyone else should just keep the traffic flowing. Whenever I've been in a funeral procession, I've not been in a mood to pay attention to whatever I was passing by. The person who's being honored is definitely not going to know if anyone stopped. You prioritize the vaguely possible feelings over a bunch of total strangers over your wife. You're the jerk. Virtue signaling at its finest. Tell me you're a sanctimonious husband without actually saying you're a sanctimonious husband. If my husband tried to pull some crap like this with me, he'd be single. Disrupting the flow of traffic and making your wife miss her play was completely unnecessary. Don't be surprised when she leaves you for someone who doesn't feel the need to virtue signal what a saint they are. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I think it sounded like kind of a nice thing to do, but what do I know? I'm just a Karen. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my ex-wife to my son's wedding? My son is 22. My daughter is 18. 6 years ago, my daughter caught my wife with another man. She told her brother, who understood what she had witnessed, then they both came and told me. I verified that it was true, then I divorced my wife. During the divorce hearing, both of them expressed a desire to stay with me, so I was given primary custody with her getting 1 week a month. She moved in with the other guy. I've done my best to cut my ex out of my life. Our communication is limited to the bare minimum needed to coordinate custody and shared expenses, and I've never talked about our relationship to my kids. Initially, after the divorce, she told me that our kids were giving her crap when it was her custody and that I needed to talk to them. I sat them down and asked if this was true, and they said that they didn't want to stay there. But I explained that it would be best for everyone if they remained civil until they turned 18, so we wouldn't have to go back to court. I didn't get complaints after that, so it seemed to be working. When my son turned 18, he moved back in with me full-time and started college. He graduated now, and he's getting married in a few months. My daughter turned 18 last summer and moved back in with me full-time too. My ex-wife called me today and she started crying, saying that she was not invited to my son's wedding. Then she told me that my son hasn't talked to her in over a year. He had still been dropping in after turning 18 to visit his sister sometimes, but eventually stopped doing that too. Likewise, apparently my daughter stopped talking to her after turning 18 too. Then my ex-wife asked if I would bring her as my +1 so she could see her son getting married, but I told her if my son didn't invite her, it wasn't my place to bring her. Then she started accusing me of turning them against her and threatening to take me to court. But I told her that there was no more custody agreement to take to court since both of them are over 18, and I hung up. I sat down with both of them later and asked them if they had cut contact with their mother, and they both admitted it. I explained to them that they did not need to do that for my sake, and I still recognize she's their mother. But they both said that they had talked about it a lot, and their plan was always to hold out until they were 18, but they had no desire to be around her or the other guy because she had destroyed our family. I told them that they're adults, and if that's their decision, I won't pressure them to change it. I was telling my sister what happened, and to my surprise, she said my son wasn't being fair and I should make him invite his mother to the wedding. Am I the jerk for refusing the attempt? Not the jerk. She had 6 years to figure out how to at least repair enough damage that her kids wouldn't go no contact the moment they were able to. Sounds like the opposite happened. Not the jerk. Not the jerk, but your sister is. I don't know what's with people pushing family members to reconcile simply because they're blood related, but it's something that needs to stop. People are allowed to choose who they want in their lives, and just because someone helped create you doesn't mean you have to choose them. Your sister is being empathetic and putting herself in your ex's shoes. Your ex is no doubt heartbroken, but it's a result of her own actions that broke 3 more, far more vulnerable hearts. Your sister should extend your son the same empathic courtesy. Ask her to imagine that if she was saying her marriage vows, would she want the homewrecker who wrecked her home specifically there? Her biggest, most personal example of how to destroy a marriage? Also, anyone who thinks your kid's feelings are extreme should not forget the kids discovered her infidelity first and were forced into a position of either betraying you or ending their own family unit. Yeah, easy not the jerk for you and your son. Forget your ex-wife. Apparently, it's rude to ask customers to please not touch employee equipment. So I'm working 2 jobs while in school right now. One job is a more traditional serving job. The second job is at a counter service style restaurant where you order at the front and seat yourself with a table number in hand and an employee brings your food out to you. Yesterday was Sunday, which is our busiest and unfortunately least staffed day. I handle rushes at this job really well despite being fairly new still. I had a line of about 6 people formed with a full dining room. I was assisting a customer who had just come in to pick up a to-go order. This took maybe about 2 minutes as I did have to make a couple of drinks. I was a bit to the side of the register when I assisted the current customer, so I politely informed the next guest I would be with them ASAP, and they told me to take my time. The guests waiting had already had their food, but they decided to order a dessert to go apparently. Literally about 20 seconds after they told me to take my time, the customer I'm currently assisting goes, while pointing in their direction. The customers in line are leaning over the counter and attempting to ring in their own order. I said, "Sir, please do not do that. As I said, I'll be with you in just a moment. I'm finishing this gentleman's last drink now." The customer sheepishly said, "We just figured we could ring it in ourselves." I said I'm sorry, but no. These are not set up to be self-service kiosks and they needed to wait. By this time, I was ready to take their order, but they had already managed to send an incorrect order through to the kitchen. They didn't mark it properly as to go, which, duh, they don't work there and aren't trained to know how to do this. So I had to go into the back and explain to the kitchen what happened and to not make that order and come back to the front and correct their order. They were in such a hurry, they ended up causing an even longer wait for themselves and the others in the line. The previous customer kind of looked at them like they were weirdos while he was leaving. They did mumble an apology and said they just assumed it couldn't be that hard, so they wanted to do it. I just politely reaffirmed that our store is not set up for this and asked them kindly to please be patient with me in the future and apologized that there was a wait that inconvenienced them at all. The man later called and complained, saying I embarrassed him in front of his family for scolding him, which is funny. I really was much kinder about it than a lot of my coworkers might have been, and also said that I told him he wasn't smart enough to do my job, which just isn't true. It was just such a bizarre interaction, I wanted to share it. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my brother be part of the family business? I, 44 male, have a younger brother, 41 male, and we are the only kids. Also, we are not from the US or any Western country, so please excuse any errors. My father passed almost 10 years ago. Since our mother was also gone, we divided his estate equally. His estate was a farm of 30 acres. Back then it had a house, a barn, a pond, wheat fields, and olive fields. Both of us were working office jobs in the city and did not want to be farmers. But after my dad passed, my wife convinced me to quit, buy out my brother, and start a business with her. She had degrees in business and hospitality. I was working in accounting. And that's what I did. I bought out my brother at market price. After that, my wife and I transformed the farm, got government subsidies to make our farm more sustainable, transformed the area by the pond into a garden and romantic strolling route and a fishing spot. The closest farm plots were made into a farm and some made available to guests to rent, built small houses, built a stable and bought some horses. We made it into a retreat where you can either spend the day, act as a farmer, or have some authentic food, or rent a cabin and try farm life. The rest of the farm was left to farm hands. Since we are barely 2 hours outside of city limits, it became a booming business. We're booked solid all year. We have schools coming for tours, activities every weekend, couples throwing their weddings here. And after the first 5 years, we were able to pay off our debt and are making great money. My brother used his money to buy a house, 2 cars, and on his children's schooling. And they're living well, I would say upper middle class by my country standards, but nothing like me and my family. Now he says that what he wants is in on the business, that what he was paid was not fair. I told him no, that he got what his land was worth back then. Now he's no longer talking with me, and he's the only family I have left. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He got market value for his half. He used it up. You invested your time and money, and now you're getting your return on investment. No need to feel guilty. Not the jerk. If he had invested his half of the money into literally anything else, would he share the fruits of that investment with you? I don't think so. You had all the work transforming the place, and you had all the risk of it not working too. Also, it definitely sounds like you invested some of your own money too to make all that possible. He wants all the fruits of the labor without doing any of the labor himself. I get that you don't want to lose him, so maybe there's a calm way to talk about all of this, with a mediator present or something like that. He needs to understand that you invested the money and succeeded. But I mean, you could have failed too, and if you did, would he just give you money from his half? Am I the jerk for finding my friend's behavior uncomfortable? About 3 months ago, I, 22 male, started hanging out with a new friend circle. At first, I knew only one person in the group, but most of them are very friendly and it was easy to feel included, and despite not knowing everyone for long, I just feel like part of the group. However, I recently started feeling uncomfortable with the behavior of one of my friends, who I'll call B, 20 female. B is probably the one I've talked to the least. I don't dislike her, but I believe that she prefers to talk with people she knows for longer. This is not the part that bothers me. It bothers me how she acts around A. A, 21 female, is very extroverted and is the person that made me feel the most welcome in the group. It sometimes feels like the entire friend circle revolves around her, which is fair because she gets along with literally everyone. Now to the problem. B is very attached to A. I mean, way too overattached. If they are both in the same room, 9 out of 10 times, B will be right beside A. If A is, for example, laying on the couch when B enters the room, she sometimes will literally ignore everyone else and beeline to A, and sometimes just lay on top of her. No matter what the context is, she's always hugging or touching A in some way, and it's not even subtle. Obviously, I don't have anything against them being close, but I think A is just obliging B for the sake of peace. B doesn't act like this with anyone else, nor is anyone else as attached to A as B. Also, my other friends are more respectful of personal space, so often A and B are the only two who are close together when we're all hanging out, and it's just really awkward. Finally, one day I was talking with A. My other friends were around, but doing something else in the same room, when B just interrupts our conversation to hug A. A just laughed and continued talking, but I found B's behavior very rude. Since I'm not as close to B, I decided to speak to A about the situation. A few days later, I brought it up when we were alone. I told her that she should speak with B and establish some boundaries. She just kind of shrugged and changed topics, but I insisted, saying that B's behavior was uncomfortable to see, especially when it's all of us hanging out. I specifically mentioned the incident of the other night. To my surprise, she just laughed and said if it really bothered me, I should just close my eyes. I warned her that if she kept letting B act like this, people could get wrong ideas. Finally, she told me to keep to myself and pretty rudely told me to shut up. I was surprised since A had never talked to me like this. I was only expressing how uncomfortable I was, and I don't know why A was defensive since B is the one in the wrong here. Maybe I should have talked to B directly, but either way, I want to know if I'm really the jerk here. Edit. Many people here seem to believe A and B are dating. Maybe I made it sound that way. If it's any relevance, they are not. If they were, I would at least understand why B is so attached. Edit 2. It seems people seem to believe I have romantic feelings towards A. I would have said so if I did, but I don't. You're the jerk. This is where you should mind your own business. Everyone has different boundaries. If A is okay with it, why do you care so much? This has nothing to do with you. It's between B and A. You're the one stressing out over it. They're fine. You're the jerk. They're both okay with the situation, and I'm really unsure as to why you're so bothered by it. Are you jealous, perhaps? Is it some kind of insecurity you're unaware of? I recommend trying to find that out. I'm not sure why this even bothers you. They aren't affecting you at all. Plus, there could be a dynamic you're missing. It certainly seems that way. Stay in your lane, or you'll be finding a new friend group. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or not? Please let us know. Sounds to me like an A and B sort of thing. Perhaps he should see his way out of it. Oh, you just had to do that, didn't you? My stepmom and siblings are just using me for money. I have several siblings on my father's side. In total, there are 3 with the same mother as me and 5 who are my stepmom's kids. Naturally, some siblings are closer than others, but I consider us as one big group of siblings. Almost everyone has gotten kids, and in total, my father has 25 kids and grandkids. 6 of those don't live locally. Of the siblings with a different mother, I'm the only one that lives close by. I'm gonna be honest and say I'm not the best at visiting, but my little family ensures to visit the few times we're invited. We rarely ask for anything, as we don't want to be the kind who only come around when we need something. Now that you have some background, here's the case. Before Christmas, I asked my father and stepmom if there would be anything at their place during the holidays. Usually there's a family lunch where everyone is invited. I was told that this year that wouldn't happen because having everyone over just was too much work and stress. I understood and I was fine with it. Then, January 1st, I suddenly see on social media that all 16 of my stepmom's kids and grandkids are gathered there for a family lunch. I heard nothing of it and straight up felt hurt. I know they often get together during the year, and I'm fine with that, but this time I felt lied to. Except from asking a bit around, I didn't end up doing much about it. Until suddenly today, one of my step-siblings asked if we wanted to contribute towards a new PC for my father, as his one had broken down. I snapped and called my sister. I told her that I didn't like it how me and my family kept being forgotten for social family gatherings, but remembered every time there was a need for money. I then suddenly got an apology from my stepmom, where she basically blamed the lack of invitation on her oldest daughter. Some of her other kids said the same thing. I decided to ask my oldest stepsister directly about this, who told me she was being thrown under the bus. Now it's all just a big mess of drama, where some of the siblings support and understand my feelings, while others think I'm making a big deal out of nothing. As you probably can tell, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. We do sometimes get invites for birthdays and such, but thinking about it, it's only occasions where bringing a gift is mandatory. No casual dinners, board game nights, or family barbecues. So the question is, am I the jerk for claiming my stepmom and step-siblings forget about me when planning family fun time and only remember me when they need money? Not the jerk. Don't give them anything. They left you out on purpose. Whether it's the oldest sister's fault or not, they all decided it was okay to leave you out, knowing you would see their posts. That's messed up. Not the jerk, but your dad is for not sticking up for you more. Also, they did not forget. Your stepmom did this on purpose because she just wanted her kids there. Make sure your dad knows that and let him know you're upset that he is cool with his treatment of his kids and grandkids. Stop acting like a teacher. So I did. 3 years ago, I started working in a company where my manager was a jerk that would insult us and blame any problem on his employees, trying to get them against each other. I got burned out after a year of 10-hour days and weekends, and on top of doing tasks that were greatly above my paycheck and completely different from what I was promised as I got there. So I gave my resignations. My manager thought I was useless, as he often said about anyone but himself. So instead of trying to find a new employee, he decided he would take over my role, to the horror of all my coworkers. The only problem, I was the only person who knew perfectly the company ERP program, and I would have had to teach him my 1.5-year experience in 2 weeks. As I started to teach him, he got more and more frustrated and terrified by the amount of workload that was coming his way and started to insult me even more, but I was still trying to teach him the best I could for the sake of my coworkers. All of this until the first day of my last week. I was pointing out a mistake he was making every time he did a certain task, and he replied at me saying, "Shut up, I don't need you acting like a teacher." So, malicious compliance. I didn't. I just sat beside him for the next and last 5 days, not teaching him anything, and every time he couldn't remember how to do something, I would jokingly cheer him up, telling him I was sure he could come up with a solution himself if he focused enough. When problems would come up that I still didn't have the time to solve, I would tell him, "I don't know how this thing happened. It never happened to me. You should contact the client service. They taught me everything when I needed." The peak of this was when he got so frustrated that he started to repeatedly slam his mouse against the desk and then sat there staring blankly at the screen for 10 minutes. I had to actually keep myself from laughing in his face. After I left, I spent the next 2 months getting called almost daily by my ex-colleagues to help them find files or solve problems that they couldn't find an answer for and that I didn't have the time to teach them, as I had to stay with the manager all the time. Am I the jerk for asking all the guests to leave after my brother and sister-in-law's pregnancy announcement? I'm 28, male, and my wife, Anna, is 28. We were expecting. She was almost 3 months. We were really excited. We bought everything a baby needed and talked a lot about our future with the baby. August 23rd, 2022, she miscarried. We had a really hard time accepting the fact, but Anna was much more affected. She would cry in our bed for at least 4 hours every day. She wouldn't eat, and she would say awful things about herself. I had tried to console her to the best of my abilities, but I was grief-stricken myself, and I couldn't say the right words to her. It took 4 months of therapy for us to gradually start feeling better. Anna was smiling more. She was still a little on edge, but she was doing good. January 14th was Anna's birthday, and I wanted to make it really special for her. I invited our friends and family and cooked her favorite foods. I just wanted this day to be happy for her. For context, our families know about this situation and the effect it had on Anna, especially my brother and sister-in-law, as we had stayed in their house for a bit. While everyone was eating the food, my brother and sister-in-law got up and told everyone that sister-in-law was pregnant. After 4 seconds of silence, everyone in the room started congratulating them. I was stunned and turned to my wife, having an emotionless expression, until she smiled slowly and congratulated them and hugged them both. For a good 20 minutes, everyone couldn't stop talking about pregnancy, baby names, and new baby toys. They could have easily announced this at their 5-year anniversary party, which was just 2 weeks away. What was the point of announcing it on my wife's birthday? I noticed my wife get up and leave to go to our bedroom. I found her crying. She told me she doesn't want to go out now, that she doesn't want to face them. I understood and quickly headed to the table where everyone was done eating, talking as if they hadn't noticed we had left. I didn't want to make a big scene, so I told everyone kindly that me and Anna had some plans for the evening and that we would have to cut this party short. That was the only thing that came to my mind at the moment. Sister-in-law comes walking towards me and starts yelling at me, saying that I'm doing this because of her announcement. I tried telling her as calmly as possible that it wasn't like that, and this was supposed to be Anna's birthday party, not some pregnancy announcement party. I said my goodbyes, then 2 hours later I got a message from my brother saying I was selfish and that I shouldn't be jealous just because we won't be as careless as the two of you. Careless as in implying that we had somehow caused the miscarriage, even though we were incredibly careful. I'm beyond frustrated. Do you think I'm the jerk because of how I handled the situation? Not the jerk. Announcing your pregnancy at someone else's party is incredibly selfish. Doing so at the party of someone who has recently miscarried is beyond evil. And as for your brother's carelessness moment, I think that's a clear case of fighting words. You're beyond frustrated? That's it? I'd be enraged. I am enraged on your behalf and I don't even know you. I'm not sure why you're tiptoeing with these jerks. Not the jerk, and I'd be laying into them. On what planet was this appropriate? Even if you guys hadn't lost a pregnancy, it's rude to make someone else's party about you, just like you don't announce an engagement at someone's wedding. And his later remark about being careful? What? If one of my brothers pulled a stunt like that, they'd get an earful from me, whether it was my party or not. The way sister-in-law got in your face screaming, and that comment your brother made at the end, makes me think they announced the pregnancy at Anna's party on purpose, wanting to upset her. I have some ideas why they would do that, but none of it matters. Nothing can excuse this kind of behavior, especially if they had their own party 2 weeks later. Keep taking good care of Anna and go no contact, and obviously not the jerk.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.